Okay. So, uh, right. I'm not sure if Jessica can. I'm really really sorry. We've had some technological nightmares today, so I'm not sure whether anyone is still on the call to actually go ahead with this webinar. Jessica, could you tell me if you can hear me first of all, so that I know whether to go ahead because we're running so late now, or whether we should reschedule. So if you are there, can you just bear with me for a second because I'm just trying to find out whether we're going ahead. Oh, good. People are here. Fantastic. Okay, I'm so sorry. Okay, I really, really am sorry, and hopefully I'll make it up to you. Yes, there was just a nightmare, and I couldn't get the camera or the microphone to switch on, but they are on now. So what I'm going to do, apart from say hello and welcome, is I want to take you through a little presentation, first of all, just to explain more about what's going on in your body at this life stage and what you can do about it to overcome your symptoms and feel well again. So I'm sure most of you have seen at least one of my films and heard me talk about the fact that I've been running a program for over 25 years and helping women to overcome their symptoms and get symptom-free at the time of the perimenopause and menopause. And we do it without any drugs or hormones. So I just want to give you a little bit more background information, and I'll thread some tips through as I go along. Now, in order to do that, I need to put a little PowerPoint presentation on. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and that will take my camera off. But when we've been through the presentation, I'm then going to come right back, and I'm going to answer your questions. So we'll have plenty of time to do that afterwards. So if you can just bear with me, you can, we go through this and you've got questions, you can type in your questions, and then Jessica will help sort out all the questions for me afterwards, and I'll just answer them one after another. So hopefully that will get through everything. So just bear with me for a second while I share my screen, and then I'll put the presentation on. So just hopefully this will not be a nightmare. Hang on, let's just get the presentation. I'm sorry, it's supposed to be open, but it doesn't seem to be. So let's see if I can. Now, if you can still hear me, I'm just struggling trying to get the presentation on now, so just bear with me for a second. It's obviously a day I should have stayed in bed. No, I'm still back here. Bear with me for a second. Ah, here we go. I think we're in business. Hold on. If you can just text me just to make sure everyone can see that, and then I'll know I'm going in the right direction. So yep, she says good. That's fantastic. Right. So here we go. So you know you're in the right place by now because you've been in the group for a little while, whether it's a day, a week, or a month, or longer. You know that there are lots of people going through the same thing that you're going through, or something very similar, and probably have been doing it in isolation, just as you have, and wondering what the heck's going on in your life, and is this all that life has really got in store for you? But there are solutions, and you don't need to carry on suffering. So that's what this is all about. So our program that we started at the Natural Health Advisory Service all those years ago helps over 90% of women to be symptom-free. And the lovely little cartoons that were done for me, which hopefully make you chuckle a bit, were done by a guy who became Mike Gordon, who became the cartoonist of the year the following year. So I love using those cartoons. As you've gathered, there are just so many different sorts of symptoms at this life stage. So some people only have one or two, others have a full house. And it can be very, very, very depressing and debilitating when you can't sleep at night, when you've got terrible panic attacks and palpitations. It's very scary. And when you're dripping and you just cannot stop the water from running through your hair and down your neck, it's incredibly embarrassing. So not to mention some of the other symptoms like the dry vagina and peeing when you cough and all that stuff. So there are reasons why this happens in your body, and you can go one of two ways at this particular point. You can just carry on going downhill, or you can learn how to meet your body's needs and you can overcome your symptoms. So that's what this is about. So it's the end of all the hormone rage in your body. It's the end of nutritional deficiencies, and I want to explain to you exactly how that works. So just before I do, I want to give you a little bit of background about me, because you come across all sorts of people on the internet, as we'll talk a bit more about later on. Some of them are real and some of them are probably not quite so real, and they've got something to offer you with profit in mind. This is an initiative that has been obviously running, and patients do pay for their one-to-one consultations, but it's something I'm very passionate about, helping people to overcome their hormone problems. And I started I think my first book came out in 1986. It was on PMS. And that was because we had found 200 medical papers on the subject of PMS. And we did lots of research and found that women had very low levels of nutrients. And then we helped them through their PMS. And then in about 1990, there was enough research to start talking about menopause. And that was when I started to help patients going through the menopause. And I've written lots of different books on menopause and lots of different self-help manuals as well. So altogether, I've written 27 books. I founded the Natural Health Advisory Service, which started out life a long time ago as the PMT Advisory Service. And we probably helped well over tens and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of women all over the world through our own initiative with our clinics and also through articles that we've had published in the media. And for, as I said, over 90% of patients, we've done several studies, are symptom-free within 5 months. And that can be true for you too. As people may have very severe symptoms and just not know whether they can survive another day. It doesn't matter how severe your symptoms are, they can be addressed. So other things I've done apart from helping patients is I've done lots of broadcasting and writing over the years. I had a column in the Mail for a year called Alternatives to HRT. I've written for all these different publications and more. And I used to appear on morning TV shows with Dr. Mark Porter, Dr. Hilary Jones, answering questions, Nutritionist for Woman's Hour. And I've had my own TV series called The Really Useful Health Show, which was on TV for 3.5 years. And these are 3 of the patients that have been helped, just 3 picked at random. You're going to be hearing more from Lynn on the left, who was in a complete heap when I met her. She was actually contemplating suicide. She was in the throes of thinking about the fact that she's probably going to get divorced, and definitely thinking she couldn't live another day without taking some antidepressants. She got through, in fact, she described her vagina as a burning fireball, and she couldn't have any relations with her husband. Life was just a complete mess, and she put a lot of weight on because she'd been on HRT for a long time. So we got her through, and she retrained and became a healer, and lost all the weight and feels fantastic. The one in the middle is called Gail. She's publicist and very high energy lady normally, with lots of high-powered clients, but she couldn't sleep through the night. She couldn't get out of bed and motivate herself, and she was really losing it and felt that her head had turned to cotton wool. And I met her 4 months ago, I think, and she's now symptom-free, sleeping like a baby, no more flushes. She's got her libido back and everything, a concentration, everything. So she's fine. And Helen on the right was another lady. Again, I mentioned her in the book, and she went from feeling terrible to feeling really good. And they're just 3 random cases that I picked to share with you. And the fact is that all of them came feeling terrible, and they all went off feeling great. And for Lynn, it's been a number of years, and for Helen too, and they all still know how to look after themselves in the long term. They didn't just overcome their symptoms at the time of the menopause, but they learned how to look after their bones, their heart, and their memory in the long term too. So a few myths. First of all, we're going to go myth, and then we're going to talk about the truth, and then I'm going to give you some tips. So this myth, is that the symptoms won't last very long. Once your menopause has passed, you're on safe ground. Well, that is absolutely not true, as you'll see, because from the menopause onwards, our ovaries stop producing estrogen, and they're never going to start producing estrogen again. So the symptoms can then continue indefinitely, and some studies show that they can go on for as many as 10 years, but now we're living so much longer than we ever have before. So, for example, 100 years or so ago, the average age we made it to was 50. For many of us, that's only halfway house. And we've got lots of good years to look forward to and lots of fun to have in our lives if we feel well. And we also need to be able to know how to prevent things like heart disease, osteoporosis, and dementia in the long term, because they are things that we're much more prone to when we're no longer protected by estrogen. So the first tip is one of my favorite ones, doesn't cost any money, and you can just do it at home or wherever you can lay down, because you need to do 15 to 20 minutes of formal relaxation a day, and that will keep your flushes at bay. The research shows it reduces flushes by as much as 50 to 60%. So it's something that you can incorporate into your day every day. And that's really, really important. You can start that today, for example. So that's important. The second myth is that we need to take hormone therapy or drugs to control our symptoms. And in fact, again, all of these symptoms, that was the same slide that I had up earlier, they can all be addressed naturally. You can actually overcome all of these symptoms through diet, lifestyle, taking maybe some supplements, exercise, and I'll talk a bit more about that. So the next tip is that overly spicy food, hot drinks, and alcohol can bring on a flush. So if you could make a hot drink and let it cool down, keep alcohol right down to a minimum. I tend to say to my patients probably no more than 3 units of wine a week. Ideally, it depends on you, but I certainly know when I went through the menopause, I only had to have 1 sip of wine and it would bring on a flush. So you might have to go on the wagon for a few months while you get your symptoms under control, and then you can go back to drinking wine and you won't have any problem. So I think that's really important. And obviously, if you want curry, then have a very mild one, because the spices, anything that heats up your body can bring on a flush. If you imagine you're like a pair of weighing scales, the old-fashioned scales with 2 pounds, and they're kind of in even balance. If you heat up your body, then the scale tips and the flush comes, and that's how it works. So the next myth, myth number 1, is that one size fits all. And that means that one thing can help everybody to feel great. And that is just too optimistic for words, because there are so many different scenarios at the menopause. You've got people going into an early menopause. You've got those that have a hysterectomy, so they have their ovaries removed and they go into a rapid menopause. Then perimenopause, which is about 5 years around the time of the menopause, when you start to get menopausal symptoms. The menopause itself is just one day. With hindsight, it's the anniversary of when you last had a period. So that's menopause, and then the next day you're postmenopausal. You've got severe physical symptoms that you can get, which are the things like the flushes and the night sweats and insomnia and the aches and pains. And then you've got the, what I call the mental, in quote, symptoms, the anxiety and the mood swings and the depression and the panic attacks and the palpitations, that kind of thing. And some women, as I say, just get one kind of symptom, others get all of them. And so they all need to be addressed, but in slightly different ways, depending on, which is why this is all about self-assessment. It's not magic, it's just getting to know your body's needs. So the next tip is avoiding caffeinated drinks like tea, coffee, and chocolate, because the caffeine in these brings on the flushes. And that even means decaffeinated at this point, because you've got small amounts of caffeine in decaf. And so you need to avoid that, because you're supremely sensitive. We metabolize caffeine much more slowly at midlife than we did in our previous years. So it's just, you become very sensitive. So as I said before, with the program, which is a combination of diet, exercise, and taking some supplements and doing some exercise and relaxation, 5 months, and it was 91% of women, I think it was 91.5 or something, are symptom-free within the space of 5 months. We have had all sorts of people through the program, and no matter how severely they've been suffering, we've managed to help them to control their symptoms. So now let's look at what's going on in your body at this time, because there are two main things going on. One is that you've got low levels of important nutrients. So we know from the research that we did on women of childbearing age that very often they have low levels of magnesium, B vitamins, iron, zinc, essential fatty acids, calcium, and vitamin D. And lots of those nutrients are necessary for normal hormone function and for normal brain chemistry. So the brain chemistry, if you imagine, it's a bit like the conductor in an orchestra, and that it governs everything that goes on in your body. And when you've got low levels of nutrients, it's a bit like having the conductor of the orchestra with one arm tied behind his back. It's not going to sound very tuneful, and just as it means that your body is not going to work in its normal, efficient way when you're so short of nutrients. And so it's very, very important to get your nutrients back into an optimum range. That's one of the key things, to give yourself chance to feel normal at this life stage. Now, one of the things that has really occurred to me over the time that I've been dealing with women is that, amazingly, we don't suffer, and we don't share our suffering even with our best friends. So whilst you might tell someone you're feeling really hot, you're highly unlikely to talk about your libido. And I picked this slide because we've done lots of surveys over the years on women going through the menopause. And this was one slide that jumped out at me, because I felt that everyone suffers in isolation, and they don't realize that they're not the only one that's having a nightmare in the bedroom, that their vaginal tissues have got dry, that they can't orgasm, or that it's so different to how it was before. And it becomes a big strain, because they probably find it difficult to even explain it to their partner, because they don't understand what's going on themselves. So the program that we pioneered in the early 90s consists of making lots of dietary changes. So we're taking out of the body anything that's going to impede the absorption of good nutrients, because we want to make sure you're full of good nutrients so that you get your brain chemistry and your hormones functioning normally. And your doctor just isn't educated. So by the time you get through this, you're actually going to know more about nutrition and well-being than the average doctor or practice nurse. There are foods that are rich in naturally occurring hormones. that we can incorporate into your plan, and the things that I've talked about that make the flushes worse, and the foods that block the absorption of good nutrients have to go. The diet itself isn't like a diet. It's not like a weight loss diet. It's an eating plan to suit your lifestyle, and it's full of the things that you enjoy eating, which is what I tend to do with my one-to-one patients. I try and tailor it so that they like what they're consuming, and for everything we take out, we give them other things, probably one or two other things at least, that they can replace them with. And if you love cooking, then there's plenty of things that you can create in the kitchen. If you hate cooking, then there's lots of fast options where you don't have to cook at all. And if you're vegetarian, then there are plenty of vegetarian alternatives. You don't have to have meat or fish to get through this well. In fact, sometimes some vegetarian protein contains more naturally occurring estrogen than the non-vegetarian protein. These are just a few of patient comments. So Sherry Lungi, who's in the little film clip I'm about to show you, said she felt 500% better. So Sherry came to see me as a patient initially, and then she has now become a long-standing friend. And she was having awful trouble with her symptoms, as you'll see if you haven't already seen her clip. So the diet side of things, apart from correcting nutrient levels, we're looking at emulating an Asian diet, because in Asian cultures, they didn't even have a word for menopause until they started consuming a Western diet. And so there are many things that they do that we don't do. So for example, we did a survey, and we found that, and in fact, there's been other research done as well to show that the average Asian diet from a very young age had at least 30 milligrams of what's called isoflavones, the naturally occurring estrogen, a day, whereas people in countries like England and America and Canada and so on a Western diet are consuming less than 3 milligrams of isoflavones, and probably in many cases none. So we provide foods into the regime that are nutrient dense to help hormones to balance up again. And we also put in foods that are rich in naturally occurring estrogens to enter the estrogen receptor sites, because you've got, in each cell, you've got a little space. If you imagine the cells a bit like a tennis ball, and you've got space in there for a key in a lock, then when you've got circulating estrogen, it pops into that little space and keeps everything ticking over nicely. If you've got good nutrient levels, then your hormones will stay in an optimum range, and you don't actually notice anything going on. When your estrogen receptor sites are empty, that's when the brain starts to try and kickstart the ovaries back into function, and that's why you get thermal surges being pushed through your body in an attempt to kickstart the ovaries back into function. So it's not, when you put naturally occurring estrogen into your body, it competes successfully for the little receptor sites, and the brain, because the estrogen, the naturally occurring estrogen, looks so similar under the microscope to estrogen that was in your body before the menopause, the brain is fooled into thinking you've got normal circulating estrogen again. So you can actually eliminate the foods that trigger the flushes, you can top up on naturally occurring estrogen, you can get your nutrient levels back into an optimum range, and you can actually feel really well again. As far as supplements are concerned, there are lots of supplements on the market, as you all know, but they are variable quality. I've found supplements from around the world that have been through clinical trials and put all the research together so that there's a whole tool bag full of tools that you can use depending on your symptoms. Obviously, you can't take them all and you wouldn't want to swallow them all, but you can select which ones would be best for you depending on which are the worst symptoms. And from my perspective, it's really, really important to take supplements that have been through properly conducted clinical trials. Not only that they've been shown to be effective, but also they've been shown to be safe, and that they don't have any adverse effect on the breast tissue or on the lining of the uterus as well. And I happen to know that there have been lots of independent analyses done on supplements, and sometimes they don't even contain what the label says. So, for example, I worked for many years as a consultant to Efamol, who produce Evening Primrose Oil, and they had an independent analysis done, and lots of the other oils were even rancid, and they certainly didn't have the GLA content or whatever it was it said in the label. And we were approached one year by a company to recommend their product, which they said had 39 milligrams of isoflavones in it. And when I asked to see the research and they promised it to me, at that time, I was just about to go to America to a conference on isoflavones, and I happened to be moaning at lunchtime to a couple of the researchers that I was talking to about the fact that how are we supposed to know what was in these supplements? And they laughed at each other, and then they offered to share the research they'd just been doing, because they'd put 40 supplements through independent testing, and only 2 of them had what they said on the label, and the rest didn't at all. And in fact, this one supplement that was supposed to have 39 milligrams of isoflavones turned out to only have 1 milligram. So I feel really strongly that if you're going to invest in supplements, you need to know what you're taking, and you need to know that your £20 or whatever it is you're spending a month is wisely invested, and that you'll be safe, that it's going to be effective, and no harm in the long term. So that's my mission as far as the supplements are concerned. Relaxation and exercise have been shown, as I mentioned before, about relaxation. Exercise is wonderful because it releases the feel-good hormones. It speeds up your metabolic rate, which means that's the rate at which your body ticks over. So you lose weight without dieting, and it just helps you to shape up and feel good. So that's an important, but it's not about doing a marathon. We try and find the kind of exercise that you're going to enjoy, the kind of exercise that you can cope with if you're not very fit, and to build it up gradually. That's important too. So from my perspective, the information is just sitting there waiting for you, and you need to decide, are you ready to reclaim your well-being? Are you feeling determined that if it's going to take a bit of work, you're going to do it because you need to invest the beans to get the benefits? And if you'd like to be in better physical shape and have more energy, if you like to sleep well again, feel cooler and more in control of your body temperature, and to get back to your fun self with your sense of humor intact, and to feel sexy again. Because at the end of the day, what's the point of having these extra years if we don't feel great? You know, it's not the beginning of the end, although sometimes we could believe it is, with all the things that happen to us when we start gaining weight around the middle and we start getting gray hair and wrinkly and varicose veins and all of that stuff. Well, you can actually make this a whole new beginning by learning to meet your needs. And there's just so many things that you can do to help yourself. So I call this marvelous midlife. If you're armed with the knowledge, you can get yourself back to where you want to be, and maybe even better than you felt for ages. Because if you're one of those people that had a couple of babies and did some breastfeeding, then you've probably been going downhill for quite some time since then, and then it all gets worse at the time of the menopause. So this is a kind of process of refueling so that you can feel well again. So you can choose at this point. You can bury your head in the sand and hope that someone will wake you up when it's all over. But I can assure you that it won't be over anytime soon unless you take the bull by the horns and actually get into a space where you can learn how to meet your body's needs. So now there's a 5-minute film, which some patients sharing their stories. Jessica's going to load that for me, so you should be able to watch that. And I'll come. Sherry, your menopause symptoms took you by surprise, didn't they?
Yes, I was very surprised to find that I'd reached that stage of my life. I was suddenly suffering appalling anxiety. I was becoming easily wound up about very small things. And sleep. Normally I'm a good sleeper, and suddenly my sleep was interrupted, and I would have hot flushes in the night, which was very disconcerting. And I was a bit surprised that the menopause was upon me.
Presumably it affected your work too.
Yes, it did. It affected my concentration, because obviously when you're listening to someone, your director, for example, giving you some direction, and suddenly you have this physical phenomenon which is most uncomfortable. You're worried about, am I sweating? Am I turning beetroot? And my concentration would waft off, and I would not be listening to what was being said to me. I would find it very difficult to concentrate.
That must have been really embarrassing.
It was embarrassing, yes. It was disconcerting, and I wasn't used to it. All these things was something that I wasn't accustomed to. I was rather surprised and disconcerted.
So how would you say you feel now compared to how you felt in the very beginning?
I feel 500% better. I feel more energetic. I haven't got any of the symptoms, and I feel like a completely different person from when I came to see you. I feel wonderful, actually.
I was concerned that I'd been taking it for a long time, and I thought it's time to stop. I didn't know what to do. But also, while I was on the HRT, I did feel awful. I wasn't the me that I knew. When I looked in the mirror, I just didn't see the Lynn. I was just a stranger. My eyes weren't sparkly. Sometimes my skin would be white, sometimes it would be grey, and I would be so tired, so fatigued. If I was dying to go to bed at night, but I knew when I went to bed, if I went to sleep, I would wake up and I wouldn't go back to sleep again. I just couldn't. That was part of the problem. The symptoms had eased after about 6 weeks. And then, say, 10 weeks later, it was incredible. I just never thought that it would get back to normal again, but it was so much better, and it was such a relief.
After I had my 2 children, I started having very heavy and irregular periods and feeling quite low and irritable. And I went to my GP, and he sent me to the gynaecologist who treated me with DNCs, and after 4 sort of cycles of that and the symptoms getting worse, he recommended that I should have a hysterectomy. And after careful consideration, I decided to go for that, so long as they left my ovaries. And that's what we did. And then from then on, about 4 years after that, I started getting other symptoms like night sweats and very sore breasts and feeling irritable, and I got very low and very depressed. And I went to my GP, and he recommended HRT. I tried that for a very short time, but the symptoms got worse, and they did actually help the night sweats, but it didn't really help the other symptoms. They actually got worse. And then I remembered reading one day, I didn't feel very well, and I was curled up in my bed and thinking, I can't deal with anything anymore. And I remember reading an article about your clinic, and I remember phoning you up and talking to someone on the other end of the phone who actually knew what I was going through and understood everything that I felt. And that's when I came to visit you.
How long did it take before you started to notice a difference?
No more than a month, really. It was the first visit that we came, and the second visit, which was 4 weeks later, I'd seen a massive difference. So it wasn't long at all.
Did you find the diet as difficult as you thought you might?
At first I thought it was going to be difficult, but then I found it very easy, and I really liked the meal planners that were in the book.
Sharon, when did you first notice the changes in your body?
When I had my hysterectomy, and then they put me on to HRT. For about 6 months after that, I noticed a great change in my body, where my breast started to swell and I put a lot of weight on.
Did you come off the HRT?
I did, and I came off immediately. I didn't wean, I just stopped it overnight. And it took about 3 months for me to feel like things were starting to change in my body. I was putting on weight in a strange way again, retaining fluid, becoming very anxious and very sleepless and sweaty nights.
After our consultation, you made some changes. You made some changes to your diet, first of all.
Yes, I did. For my diet was mainly, that's where I started with, and I there I went from exercise, but mainly with soya. I introduced soya into my diet, and that was very relaxing. After about 3 months, I noticed a great deal of difference with the soya and various supplements I was taking.
Has it made a big difference how you feel about yourself?
I'm just feeling totally different within myself. I'm happier, sleeping well, more contented, and I can drive around and not wonder what I'm doing here. I sort of don't lose my memory. I have this very acute memory now. I remember every single thing, and I'm very on the ball. I feel very young again in my mind.
Excellent.
I'm just trying to get my PowerPoint presentation to open up again, so I hope you enjoyed the film. If you can just bear with me and let me just get the PowerPoint presentation up again, I'll share the screen and we'll just finish this and then I can start answering your questions. The program that I have been talking about is outlined in the book, the new book, Beat Menopause the Natural Way. And you've got, it's a magazine-style workbook. So you can work your way through doing self-assessments on whether you've got nutritional deficiencies, and you can assess all the different aspects of your health and well-being so that you can gradually make a program for yourself. And you've got chapters in there on scientifically based supplements. You've got, towards the end of the book, you've got menus and recipes. So you've got everything you need to do. If you're on HRT, then you can wean off if you want to. And there's instructions in both the book and the film to do that. So it's a comprehensive guide to getting your hormones back into balance, getting your nutrient levels back into an optimum range, and overcoming your symptoms. You've also got the film Get Fit for Midlife, which is 90 minutes of me talking about the menopause and explaining and showing you how to put meals together, what kind I've also been joined by a number of experts. So there's somebody there who was the president of the American Nurse Practitioner Association, a doctor who was the deputy editor of the Journal for the British Medical Society, and Diana Moran, and the exercise fitness guru, and C. Fisher Hendry, the relaxation expert. So you've got a full workout, 40-minute workout on the film, and in a separate chapter, and also a guided meditation to get you started. Because sometimes it's not that easy to learn to relax. Your mind is busy and whirring over, so it takes a bit of practice, but it's really important to see it through so that you can actually do that. So you've got all those things together, and you can have an instant download to both of them. There's a little place where once you buy the book and the film, you go through to another group, and you get a private invitation to download both the chapters of the book and the chapters of the film so that you can take it in a piece-by-piece session rather than having to absorb everything at once, because that could be too overwhelming. And plus, you get an extra 2 sessions with me where I'm specifically answering questions that you have about the material and what you should do to put get your symptoms under control. So I've started doing that really successfully. It's great to do those sessions because obviously people have had the material, they've had chance to think about what they're likely to be doing as far as their diet, supplements, and everything else is concerned, and then they've got the opportunity to ask me questions so I can answer them in a group setting. It makes the whole thing much more clear. So you've got just one of the things that we're going to be focusing on in the next week is the hidden cost of menopause, because we want to quantify it. Because it occurred to me that so many people are just wasting money buying supplements that don't work. And that goes on year in and year out. And there's really just no point doing that. Other people get prescription medicine, and assuming you pay for prescriptions, then again, if you're taking antidepressants or HRT and it's not working for you, that's another expense every month. You've also got the cost of a lack of productivity, because very often people can't go to work because they can't face going out of the door, or if they do go to work, then they're lacking productivity because they can't concentrate and focus, and so they're not being as productive as usual. So there's a cost to that, whether it's a cost to you because you're self-employed or a cost to your employer, but there's also the cost to your self-esteem, which obviously isn't quantifiable in terms of financial, but nevertheless, it's not very nice when you don't like how you feel, and also You've got other things going on where you're losing enjoyment with relationships with your partner, damaged relationships with other members of your family, and maybe even your work colleagues, not to mention the amount of money you may spend on clothes when you gain weight around the middle and you can't fit into your old clothes. So lots of ways that you can actually save money. And in fact, you can channel that money into your program so that you can get the book and the film, and you can also get whatever you need for your diet and maybe purchase some supplements for the first few months. You don't have to go on taking supplements in the long term. This is not a life sentence or a long-term pill popping exercise, but in the beginning, your body needs some help. And so you probably will choose to take 1 or 2 supplements. So instead of searching the web, which it can be a very, very confusing place these days because there's so much information out there. When you're up half the night, you can't think straight. You're not really in a position to decipher which information is good, and not all information is equal. So what I try to do, I specialize in doing over the years in all my books, is I bring the information together in one place. In the back of the book, you've got all the medical references. And so everything we do is based on published medical research. So it's all in one place. And you can have happy hormones again, and that is what I wish for you. So in order to do that, the book and the film together, including the 2 workshops, are £39.95. We had a special offer because we had the big piece in the Daily Mail the other day, so we reduced the package to £29, and I think you'll have to agree that that is really reasonable for what you're getting. So I would urge you to get that, so then you can come on your journey and start the next bit of it in the next phase and get going with your program. So you've got the choice of doing that yourself, which is purely self-help, or what I'm trying to do is transfer what I give to my one-to-one patients into a group setting. So I've done that before with 350 women in Australia when I got stuck because I went to give workshops, real workshops in different states in Australia, but the person who was organizing it messed up and 2 days before decided she wasn't going to host these events. And I got left with 350 Australian women, and I had to do something. And in those days, there were no webinars. I just managed to get a telephone line and a bridge so that everyone could come on the calls, and got them through their program. And it was so successful, I went back and did the same thing again the next year. So what I'm offering is 90-minute weekly sessions for 6 weeks. So this way, if you want some help, this is kind of assisted self-help as opposed to going it alone self-help, where I can help you to tailor your program. I can help you to sort out any troubleshooting or difficulties that you may be having in the beginning, and obviously to answer more of your questions. But I want to deal with one topic each week. So we'll be talking specifically about a different aspect of the menopause each week, as well as dealing with any questions you have, so that by the time you come out of this, you know exactly how to meet your body's needs. And I've tried to break it down into 3 monthly payments so you don't have to pay all at once. So you've got 90 minutes a week for 6 weeks, which I think I calculated comes out to about 9 hours of my time. And the cost of it is approximately 1 hour of my time on a one-to-one, or it's actually less. So you can choose. You can either get the book and the film and do it yourself, or you can join the group and come on the journey with me, and I'd be only too happy to help you overcome your symptoms. So I think Jessica has got in the group. We've got the little link that you can click on to go ahead and decide what you want to do, and then everything should happen automatically, and we'll give you some help along the way. One of the things I want you to know about what my plans are for the longer term is that I want to help to facilitate a platform outside Facebook that will be available to women all around the world, so that everyone comes to know that they don't have to suffer at this particular life stage. And I do intend over time to get this set up. It's at the forefront of my mind, and to invite other experts to come and share the platform so that you can get questions answered. So, for example, when there's conflicting reports about something like soy in the media, one day it says it's safe and it's wonderful, wonder food, and the next day you read an article saying it's worse than rat poison, how on earth are you supposed to know what all that means? Well, I can interpret it for you. I can give you the medical reference, but I can also invite the professors who have done the research so they can interpret that for you so that you understand. So where I'm going is to develop this, and I am going to, I'm reinvesting part of the proceeds from this project into that. So effectively, by coming on the journey with me, you're helping me to realize that dream, which will help lots of other women, in fact, millions of other women around the world. So that's where I'm going. And I hope that you decide to come on the journey with me, and it will be my pleasure to help you. So now let me come back to the presentation. Let's get this off the screen and I'll come back and I'll answer your questions. So just bear with me for a second. I'm back. I think I'm back. Yes, I'm back. I'm back. Okay. So, right. So now I need your questions, and hopefully Jessica will post them for me. So let's see what's going on here. Jessica, it's not coming up on the screen, but it's coming up on my phone. So let's see what it says. Second. Have underperforming kidneys. Can I take 3 Fema45, magnesium, and red clover? I would suggest, if your kidneys are underperforming, that you need to go and check that out with your doctor, because I think if your kidneys are underperforming, then anything you take should be put through your medical team. I think that's really, really important. There shouldn't be any harm in taking the Fema45 or vitamins and minerals only. Magnesium you excrete, you don't store that in your body, so you'll only take what your body needs each day and then you pee out the rest. And the red clover, well, I definitely say that you probably should get that checked out. You're probably okay with it, but I wouldn't like to say without your consultant giving the thumbs up for that. So you seem to be quite silent today. So let me see if there are any other questions. Jessica. Okay, that's all for today. So if you do have any other questions that you want me to answer, then please feel free to send them in, and I do come on and try and answer one or two. Obviously, I can't answer all the questions, but once you have the book and film, then obviously you can come into on the next part of the journey, and I will be able to answer all of your questions there. So I'm really apologise for being late again today because of the technology. We'll do another one on Thursday. So if you went off and came back on and missed part of it, then please feel free to come back and register again for Thursday, and I look forward to helping you. Thanks very much.